So yes, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chiro Kami, the founder of Diamonds for Peace. Tell us a little bit about the company.
First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I grew up in Japan, and I went to university in Japan, in Tokyo, and I studied business management. And then I studied international development in the States. And then I worked in Haiti, Laos, in the field of international development. And then I came back to Japan. I worked for an advertising agency, business consulting firm. And then I also run my own small business to teach children. But I wanted to go back to Africa, so I came back to this world again with Japanese government agency for international development. So I lived in Kenya for 2 years, but that in 2008 I got engaged and got married. So I lived in Kenya for 2 years by myself, leaving my husband behind. Yeah, but I was thinking at that time how I could do something about diamonds. So after I came back from Kenya, I still worked for a consulting company to make a living, but I also studied Diamonds for Peace in 2014 as a volunteer group. Then we registered the NGO in Japan in 2015, and then incorporated a non-profit organization in Liberia in 2016. We also joined the civil society network for OECD responsible mineral supply chains, and we also got the special consultative status at the United Nations Economic and Social Council. In Liberia, we signed an MOU for collaboration with the Cooperative Development Agency in 2020. So we are based in Japan, but we also we have a project in Liberia, and that's what we are going to talk about. And our vision is to have a world in which diamonds are mined, cut and processed with humanitarian and environmental considerations. And we have two missions. One is to improve the working conditions and social status of the workers in the diamond supply chain. And two, to promote ethics and fairness in the diamond industry. And we have three pillars of activities: awareness raising, self-reliance support, and emergency assistance. In terms of awareness raising, we are doing this mostly in Japan because consumers and jurors don't know anything about those issues related to diamonds. So we are trying to raise the awareness about the issue and how we can solve it. Okay. Yeah. So Bess will give you some introduction.
I'm the warm-up act. At this moment, I am a little fresh. Keep my distance. Right. Okay, there we are. Okay, as I said, I'm the warm-up act. I think Chair wanted me to give you all a little insight into my own personal experiences having travelled out to Liberia this April to conduct a rough diamond grading and valuing workshop for the community of artisanal miners that Diamonds for Peace support. Now, to start with, I'll just give you an indication as to how I got involved and how really this trip in itself helped me to understand why work organisations such as Diamonds for Peace are so important. So how did I end up on a plane out to Liberia? Well, global pandemic. As was the case in that particular period, I was watching an awful lot of online webinars, and it was during one of those that I came across the work of Diamonds for Peace, and I was so blown away by Chair's commitment and enthusiasm that I became invested as a volunteer. And I have been working with Chair since then, and as a gemologist and someone with an okay amount of diamonds, Chair saw a use for me, and that was to develop a rough diamond grading and valuing workshop for this community, because one of the biggest needs for miners out there is to have knowledge of the material they're producing. I mean, it seems rather daft to even say it, but their knowledge is, hopefully it's a little bit more now, absolutely minimal. So over the 2 years, a year or so, we've gathered the sponsorship and support, and then come April 2022, I found myself on a plane out to Liberia. And I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. I have never been to Liberia before. Everything I had in terms of knowledge of the country was through preconception, and I think a lot of people who I spoke to about my upcoming trip, well, they were somewhat nervous for my safety. I think my daughter will probably testify to that. Chair was like, no, it's fine, it's fine. But there was certain elements to it that I suppose is true. This photo was taken as I was coming into land, into Monrovia, the capital of the country. And I'm speaking to, well, I've been talked at by this Belgian diplomat for the last hour. He'd been based in Liberia for 4 years. He was telling me all the dark and wonderful tales, and as the plane was going into land, he said, oh, and one thing, Beth, don't get ill or injured. Well, it wasn't really high on my priorities, but why? So we'll put it like this. The local hospital in Monrovia, the John F. Kennedy Hospital, is also known as the Just for Killing Hospital, because the facilities are so poor that if you should even require any level of hospitalisation or indeed surgery, you would have to you'd have to pay for the right facilities and equipment and staff indeed to come and perform that operation. So you might as well just give up there and then. So I was a little nervous, but the image is beautiful, right? And I think that's probably what brings me to my next point, which is really, that's one of the biggest hurdles we have to overcome as people in this room, is that from a person in a developed country looking into a developing country, it can be very easy to romanticize, perhaps not romanticize, but certainly see these places as at a remove, as something that we can experience and then step away from. I had so many people tell me what an amazing experience it was going to be. But that somewhat obscures the truth of what it is we're actually seeing. That image on the left was taken in the taxi as I was driving out of Monrovia and into the bush. And it was a dusty, dark and desperate little market town. And I sent that picture to a relative of mine, and she replied very quickly how colourful the picture was. The picture on the right, I'm just as guilty, that was taken in the community I was staying at in these were the ones supported by Diamonds for Peace, and I posted that hashtag #NoFilter on Instagram, so hands up. But ultimately what we are seeing is abject poverty. Liberia is extremely poor, And that's quality that's very easily measurable. Half of the population live below the national poverty line, and that basically means that they struggle to meet their basic living needs. And the majority of those who fall into that statistic, they also live in extreme poverty, which means they live on less than $1.90 a day. And 70% of that figure living in extreme poverty are those living in the rural areas of Liberia. And it's in those areas in Liberia where you will find the artisanal diamond miners. And I think my journey in to Wiswa with chair in the front seat there and a couple of the miners in the back with me goes a long way to illustrate the level of poverty we're talking about here. Our journey into Wiswa took us around 7 hours. That's 7 hours that on the British road system would take what? An hour and a half? Because the road systems are so poor, and the reason the roads are so poorly kept is because the officials and government are too busy lining their own pockets to worry about the infrastructure in the country. I was told by the same diplomat that scared the living daylights out of me on my way into Monrovia that the budget set aside for the government cars is higher than that of education in the entire country. Now, because of such poor infrastructure, these rural communities are extremely isolated and vulnerable. The community rely heavily on the Lofa River and the surrounding bush for food. And because travel beyond the village is limited due to the poor road conditions, they have very limited access to emergency health care, and just basic supplies are very hard to get in and out. And yes, being so removed from such things allows the community to build up allows it to build up a very strong sense of community, and that indeed was palpable. These people were strong communities, particularly in Wiswa. But you would struggle very hard, struggle to find anyone in that community who is 100% happy with their lot. Sorry. And when I was out there, staying in the village of Wiswa, I was given an insight into this level of their day-to-day living. This here is an image of their local shop, the God's Plan shopping centre, and then there's the God's Plan charging centre over there. They have very limited supply of electricity. God's Plan shopping centre, God's Plan seems to be something of a brand, high street brand. It would appear in Liberia. I have make of that what you will, actually, to be perfectly honest. Do you have any idea why? But we're talking about extremely basic living conditions, extremely basic. This image here on the left, that is the community toilet, which is basically a hole in the ground surrounded by corrugated iron for modesty. Obviously most of the locals actually just use the surrounding bush instead. Although Diamonds for Peace are currently working on a toilet block project, which is a little slow on the uptake. And this image on the right is one of the diamond diggers' houses. This is the house of Victoria, a wonderful woman, incredible strength, and one of the most active members of the cooperative, who I became very fond of when I was out there. But when I say house, I'm talking about 2 very small rooms with a curtained partition. Now, where Victoria lives with her family, well, most of her family. She's married, but she has 9 children, and I believe she's just become a grandmother, if I'm not mistaken. But Victoria ultimately relies on diamonds for her living. I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of diamond mining in Liberia. The first major diamond deposit was found in the country in 1957 along the Lofa River, which is one of the most northern rivers that runs parallel to the border between Sierra Leone and the neighbouring Sierra Leone. Diamond production is not nearly as high as its neighbour, Sierra Leone. Figures currently stand at around 50,000 carats per annum. In the mid-20th century, when diamonds were first found there, that figure was obviously an awful lot higher, peaking at around 600,000 carats in the 1970s, although the reality of that figure is that most of that material was smuggled over the borders from Sierra Leone. The advent of 2 civil wars in the country, starting with a military coup in 1980, however, resulted in export sanctions being imposed on the country by the UN, but in 2007, Liberia joined the Kimberley process, and diamond has subsequently been re-established as an important mineral resource, particularly on the back of the recent discovery of some kimberlite pipes in the region, with one cluster actually quite close to Wieswa itself. But these deposits haven't been commercially exploited. It doesn't make any economic sense. So the majority of the material is sourced alluvially, so river sourced along the Lofa River by artisanal miners. So what am I talking about when I'm saying artisanal mining? Term it artisanal makes it sound really quite quaint, and it's far from that. Globally, artisanal or small-scale mining accounts for 20% of global production, with artisanal diamond mining being carried out primarily in the developing world, principally Africa. And the diamond, for instance, the diamonds produced by the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, are most of them are artisanally sourced. But what does artisanally mined diamonds actually mean? It means that the tools, and equipment used by the miners are rudimentary and the labour is intensive. The Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development Due Diligence Guidelines defines it as mining operations with predominantly simplified forms of exploration, extraction, processing and transportation. And this video tells you just quite how simplified form of extraction and processing we're talking about. This is the miners' figures in the mining associated with artisanal diamond mining is predominantly conducted by individuals, small groups or families, and because of the nature of artisanal diamond mining, being so hand-to-mouth, selling to whoever will buy, well, often without the luxury of challenging the the miners will often not even challenge the legality of the purchase and who's doing the buying. And it's also nomadic in nature, which means it is quite often prone to being a conduit for smuggling, legal practices, and various human rights abuses. But ultimately, it is these people's principal form of income. They rely on this. And current figure from the World Bank currently stands at 41 million people directly involved in artisanal mining, to give you an idea of just how many lives depend on this. Now, as a matter of interest, whilst I was out there, I interviewed a lot of the kids in the community and asked them a simple question. I asked them, what is diamond? And what was so interesting is that they all replied in very much the same way. Almost like it was scripted. But this video here is a video of Bacchus D.
What is diamond?
Diamond is a mineral.
What is mineral?
Mineral is a natural resource of life.
Mineral is a natural resource.
Source of life.
Only the
The whole of Africa.
where mineral come from?
We are not working on the ground.
Under the ground. What the value of diamond?
It is our future. It will move to our countries.
It was all very, very similar scripted responses from most of the kids there. And you see, the point is they understand that diamond's a mineral, challenge them on what a mineral is, and they would fail quite significantly to tell you what it is, but what they do know is that mineral is a resource, and a mineral resource equals money. They get that. But they are a long way from benefiting from that at the moment, even though they sit at the very source of the diamond supply chain. They are the hands that dig the diamonds that we spend thousands upon out of the ground. And that is what Diamonds for Peace is working towards rectifying through the support they are giving, and about which we will hear a lot more in a minute. Artisanal diamond mining communities are one of the most vulnerable and under-recognised players in the diamond supply chain. However, with the right support, they could offer the industry one of the most ethical and sustainable sources of diamond, but more importantly, go a long way to improving the lives and livelihoods of these communities, which is, after all, the most important outcome, right? And yes, you may well say, but they're diamonds. They are a luxury, they are not essential to any of our lives, to us, so why continue to encourage their dependence on them? Because the fact stands, as long as there is diamond, or indeed any gemstone, there will be people who covet them. And as long as there are people who covet them, there will be miners. And as long as there is a chance, they will take it, believing that one day their luck will strike. The local moniker in Wiswa for a diamond is the lucky ticket. It is therefore up to the consumer, to anyone in the jewellery industry, to keep that demand in place. Our desires fuel their hope. Now I'm going to pass you on to Chair, who's going to give you a little bit more of an insight into the projects that Diamonds for Peace are currently working on. My daughter will be, Eliza will be asking the questions, so she'll be leading the next section.
I'm Beth's daughter. So I think the first question we have for you this evening would be to tell us a little bit more about what drove you to set up Diamonds for Peace in the first place. Tell us a bit more about the organisation itself and how it came to be.
Okay. When I first got engaged in 2008, I received a diamond ring from my future husband in Japan, and I got very interested in diamonds because I didn't know anything about it. So I searched the internet, expecting happy and fun stories, but I found the opposite. And I was so shocked to to find there was a child labor, human rights abuse, environmental destructions around the diamonds. So because I was working in the field of international development, I started thinking what I could do. So in 2014, I visited Liberia for the first time. Then, I met the deputy minister at the Ministry of Mines by chance, actually. And actually, he is a very open-minded person. And at that time, he was leading to develop the policy to organize all the miners in the country. So I thought we are looking at the same directions. So that's why I decided to do something about diamonds in Liberia. So that's how I set up DfP.
And now you've been working with the organisation, and you've made a lot of progress. You've gone through lots of projects. So what is it that drives you now, seeing what you've done already and what more you can?
Well, what drives me now is the people on the ground, the miners and diggers we're working with in WISA, and because some of them in a process of real transformation. So looking at them, I also get motivated to continue this job.
So I think the next part we're going to look at is there are many aspects of the work that you do, and they can be broken down into 3 different sections. I think the first one that we'd like to focus on is the idea of additional income generation. So, as you can see, we've got some nice terms up there. And one of the issues that I think you really focus on is the fact that miners become very dependent on their supporters. So, in terms of diamond mining. So there are other aspects to help create additional income generation in order to remove this dependence on the supporters. So the first one I think would be interesting to look at is the beekeeping that you looked at the current project.
So before I talk about beekeeping, let me explain a little bit about the terms I'm going to use. So these are the terms we usually use in Liberia. And miner, if I say miner, that means a person who has or who is supposed to have a mining license. If I say a digger, that means a person who actually digs the soil to find diamonds. And if I say a supporter, for Liberian context, that means a person who provides miners or diggers with some support, part of funding or a tool or equipment for a mining project. And the broker is a person who is supposed to have a broker license, but many of them don't, who buys diamonds from a miner and sell them to a dealer. Dealer means an exporter. So these are the terms I use. And I also need to explain about this. We conducted a survey in 2016 to 17 to understand what was really going on the ground. And we found out that why they are trapped in extreme poverty. That's because they don't have any money for mining project. They have to have a license or tools, equipment, but most of them are very poor, so they cannot afford it. So depend on the people called supporter, and they provide some money to hire diggers or tools or equipment. But in return, the miners, they are forced to sell their mined diamonds to a supporter at supporter's very convenient price, which is very low. So actually supporters also don't know anything about diamonds, but they just say, oh, this diamond color is not good, or it has cracks, such a thing, and they never give them a good price. So the miners can get no profit, so they are stuck in this vicious cycle. So this is the financial aspect, and the knowledge aspect. So their knowledge on diamonds, actually it's almost nothing. We will talk about it later in more details. So they cannot bargain when they sell the diamonds to a buyer, and thus they cannot get the profit, and they are also in this cycle. So what we are trying to do is, for the financial aspect, we are trying to diversify their income sources and increase their income. So actually for the additional income activities, we have many, such as beekeeping, fish pond, agroforestry, soap making sales for digger years, rice and cooking oil sales for women's group, and we are also planning the color stones mining and sales. And the cooperative we are working with has a goal, which is to run their own mining projects with their own funds. So that's why we are doing many this kind of income generation activities. And on the knowledge aspect, we are providing them education on the grading and evaluation, which we will talk about more details later. So these two together, combined together, they are like wheels of a vehicle. So with the two together, I think they will be able to sell their diamonds at a better price. So this is our thinking to plan all these activities. So these are just classification of some latest activities we're having. So on the left, you can see the activities to improve their skills and also income. And on the right-hand side in the green, you can see the activities to protect human rights and development. So we will talk about this. Okay. So let me explain about the beekeeping. This is the first income generation activities we started. And we started this in September 2020. We had our first training in West. Then we are working with a Canadian NGO which provides training in beekeeping. So those trainers visited WISA every month for their monthly practical training. Then some good learners have taken next level training. Then we also provided the pre-harvest training May this year. And this year, from April to March next year, we are providing further training because many beekeepers have gained the basic skills already. So we are graduating from these trainers. And this is a photo from the first training, and they learn how to make beehives by themselves. And they are bringing the beehives to the forest, and the trainer is teaching how to bake the beehives. And the reason we introduced this beekeeping in WISA is that it's not just for income generation, but to turn their eyes to environment. Because in order to have more honey, they need to have more flowering trees. So they need to conserve the forest and also to plant more trees. And because their knowledge on the environment is also non-existent almost. So it was one of the opportunities we gave them to open their eyes on the environment. So I want to show this very brief video. They are setting up the hive and baiting the hive. It's just 20 seconds. So this is how they do. And they also need to clean around the hive. And another thing which is good about beekeeping is that they need to take care of these hives only like once a week, and it takes only like 15-20 minutes only. And this is the photo to set up a hive in the forest. This is, and we have now 123 beehives in the surrounding forest, and about 35 hives got colonies. So this is also a video of practical training that they are wearing the protective gears and checking the colonies in a hive. So finally, they have waited almost 2 years, and they had a first harvest in this August. Though the amount was very small, like 2 gallons, but they celebrated, and yeah, it took long for them. And one of the things that they think when they see an NGO or outside as a foreigners is that if we go in there to work with them, things will change overnight. But things don't happen like that, right? So actually many beekeepers dropped out in the process. But we still have 20 or 30 active beekeepers. So they really, they were happy to have their first harvest. And when their harvest grows bigger, I think there will be more beekeepers in this area.
Great. Next we have the fish pond.
Thank you, Liza. Okay, so the cooperative is also developing a fish pond. So actually this is kind of a capacity development project we have been undertaking with cooperative, Diggers Association, and the women's group in USA. And the cooperative decided to develop their own fish pond too. So this photo was taken early this year, and they were working to construct a fish pond. Okay. Then in this photo you see only one fish pond. But currently they have like 3 fish ponds. One is completed, 2 are still under construction, but they are working with that. And this month we could finally bring the fingerlings, and they were so excited. Last month, I just came back from Liberia, and I was there for 2 months, and they were eagerly waiting for the fingerlings. So they were very happy, and they were waiting for our arrival. We arrived in Risa with the fingerlings around 10 o'clock at night, and they never waited for us before, but this time they really wanted to see the fingerlings, so they waited for us at night. And as soon as we arrived, they insisted to take these fingerlings to the pond to release them in the pond. This is a video, but it's not working, but we just released them at night.
Words. Everyone loves a whirring circle. Edible.
Oh,
Edible.
That's what they're doing it for.
oh.
Yeah. For food science.
Yes.
All right.
Just for fun,
Okay.
Yeah,
ornamental fish.
Oh, and the fish is a cassia.
I know you can skin them, make a nice.
And next we have the soap production and selling of the soap.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there is the diggers organize themselves in a diggers association, and they decided to produce soaps with local available resources. And but for all these income generation activities, we requested them to develop a business plan. So this is the business plan that the diggers developed for the soap making and selling, and they included the risk and how to overcome if there's such a projected problem, that kind of thing. So after modifying this business plan, we helped them to procure the materials for the first production, and also we taught them how to produce the soaps. So this is when the Diamonds for Peace staff was teaching how to make soaps to diggers. And we are trying to cut the soaps. And this is it. And they have finished 2 rounds of production and sales, and they sold everything. So currently they have they sold like $288, and we have been encouraging the diggers group to be a member of the cooperative, and with this money they finally became the official member of the cooperative this month. And so this is kind of progress for them.
And for the women's group, we have rice and cookies on the sales strategies.
Yeah. So women's group had some ideas what they wanted to do, and they first of all they insisted to have a chicken. They wanted to grow chicken, but it's kind of difficult for their first project. So we recommended something else, something easier for them, so that they can work on the chicken later. So that's why they decided to procure rice and cooking oil and then sell them in Whistle. But it was not so easy actually. It sounds very easy though. Is this? Okay, yeah. I have some problems with the video in the slide, so it's not running. But she's just trying to convince other members that chicken business would be great. So they also developed a business plan. The women's group wrote like a narrative business plan, but this is about the chicken though. But they modified the plan and they started the business. And this is where they store the rice. So women's group finished 3 rounds of procurement and sales, and the biggest challenge they had was for the first round, the second round, they sold the products on credit, and that's a very common thing in Wissa. But before they sold the rice and cooking oil, we told them not to sell anything on credit, and they said yes, yes, and then they sold it on credit. So it was kind of problem, and it's very difficult to collect the money afterwards. So after the first sales, we sat together and discussed about it. And we also, discussed about the credit, selling on credit is not good. They agreed. But for the second sales, they sold almost everything on credit. So, yeah, my librarian staff were very angry about it. And yeah, we had a big argument with the group because they agreed not to sell it on credit, but they still did it. So we were like, we acted very angry to them. And we told them that we need to collect all the money invested from this group, and we are not going to support them anymore. And we had a very serious discussions, and they finally wrote a commitment letter in which they wrote they will never sell any product on credit again. But they did it twice. So actually it was difficult for us to believe what was written in the letter. But we told them if they don't keep the words, we're gonna go to the court. So for the third procurement, finally they quit selling those items on credit. But we still need to monitor. Keeping records is also difficult, sometimes not very easy. And we are telling all the groups to collect the receipts when they buy something. And they say, yes, yes, we will collect receipt. But they didn't do it. But they finally got the first receipt collected last month. So it gradually learning. Yeah.
And the final type of additional income generation that we work on is with agroforestry.
Yes. Okay, so these miners are farmers at the same time, and they do farming when they are not mining. And the reason we introduced agroforestry this year is to incentivize reclamation by growing trees and crops on a reclaimed mine. And those miners do agriculture, but they have never received any kind of training on agriculture, so that's why we decided to do this agroforestry. Actually, this started this year, and it's a 3-year project. So right now, they just planted orange seeds last month. Yeah, and they're planning to grow rice, cashews, and potatoes next year and the year after. So this is the photo is a nursery bed right after they planted orange seeds. Yeah, I have a video to show you. They are brushing the site to develop the nursery site. And we are providing the training and inviting an agroforestry expert. And on this day, they were selecting the good seeds from the bad ones. So these are the viable orange seeds. These ones are okay orange seeds.
Good. The cooperative of the wastewater mining plant and agricultural cooperative society are here today preparing the site for the nursery where they are going to plant oranges. And this is the nursery site, as you can see up there. We are collecting dirt from that place, and it's assumed that the dirt up there is a rich dirt. So it's going to be combined with this dirt here. This is human soil. And you can mix this with this one and then make the soil more fertile so that the crops that are going to be on nursery here will germinate faster. So these are members of the cooperative and they are here working so hard, making sure that this project becomes a success. Yes, and they want to cultivate this land. As you can see, this is where they have identified for the agroforestry activities. They want to grow 3 crops, orange in the first year, and then in the second year, they are also thinking about growing cashews and avocados and other 3 crops. So this is what is happening. As you see here, this is the local way of preparing the food bag. In agriculture, there are special bags that the people use for putting crops on nursery. But this is a water sachet, as you can see. But it can also be reused for the purpose of putting crops on nursery. So this is what they are doing, cutting them out, and then they are going to put the dirt, the soil in here. We'll put the soil in here and then get the crops on nursery in this cooling bag. So this is what we have happening here. And where's Nelson? Nelson here is the technician. He's the one teaching us here what we need to do, giving us the technical know-how, and so that what we do, we can do it to the best, and then we can have the best result. So this is wonderful. It's wonderful. You see the chairperson for the cooperative, Maurice Krumah, who is very much energetic, pushing the rest of the cooperative members, making sure that this initiative becomes a success. And Isaac David there is the record keeper. While we are working, he's keeping records. Taking notes of what we are doing. Yeah, and Moses Regis is also taking photo. Yeah, DfP's agent. And Moses Zuba. Zuba is the chairperson for farming in the cooperative. Yeah, so he's leading this initiative under the technical guidance of Nelson Gay. Yeah, so as you can see, this is what Diamonds for Peace is trying to initiate with the community here. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's going to be a wonderful thing. So from this point, they are going to bring the seedlings here on nursery. So this is just the beginning. This site is going to be prepared very well, and they can have lots of other tree crops here on nursery. And then the agroforestry activities going on. Thank you.
So the orange seeds finally germinated this month, and they put them in the clean bags and then on the nursery site. This is what it looks like right now.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's really interesting to see how you're giving the miners an option to get some additional income to get money to join the co-option. But it's not just giving them additional income, it's also, you can see, diversifying a large skill and knowledge base for them. And I like that last video. It's nice seeing they really appreciate it and it really excites them. But it's not just the additional income generation that you work on, you also help support the community itself. With different projects, health related, especially during the COVID pandemic, building a toilet and some more environmental awareness and hygiene awareness. So if we can hear a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So because one of our pillars for the project is emergency assistance, we also provided some assistance during the COVID pandemic. For WISA, we provided faucet bucket to wash their hands, soaps, fabric mask, and BB cup for the clinic, and non-contact thermometer for the clinic. So this is what we did in August 2020. This is the handing over ceremony to the community, and this is the clinic officers using the BB cup. And last year, from January to April, we got a grant from the World Bank, and we implemented a health project targeting 17 diamond mining communities in Liberia. And in January and February, we did a survey to understand how it's impacted the miners and leaders. In April and May, we provided the workshop to teach what COVID is, and also what other disease symptoms are, and how to wash hands properly, and also how to make soaps with materials they can find locally. So we did it, and the total number of beneficiaries is 1,099. And some people still practicing making the soaps to increase their income. So this is a woman fixing her own soap to sell. So this is what how they continue to use the knowledge they gained at the workshop. Okay. So the next one is a public toilet. And why we are doing this is that the community, with the community requested us to make a public toilet. And there is no public toilet in the community. And the most people, more than 80% of the community members in this community practice open defecation. And they knew it was not a good thing to do. So they requested. And so we, last year until March this year, we worked on the first toilet facility, and they chose this quarter named Tupu Creek Quarter because this place is very famous for open defecation. Yeah, so they decided to build the first toilet in this quarter. And okay, we usually share the responsibilities with the community. So we only do some parts of the project, and the community members also do the other parts of the project. So we provide the materials which they cannot procure in Wissa. So we bought materials in Morovia and transported them to Wissa. And also we hired a technician for the construction. But the community also needed to bring the locally available resources like water, sand, and bricks. And they also needed to provide labor. And actually the public toilet project are the toughest project for us because they agree what they do, but once the project starts, actually they don't do what they have agreed on. So we also have a deadline because we got funding from a donor. So in this March, our staff, librarian staff, what their pressure there, and they worked until like 1 o'clock a.m. to complete this building. But they are finally done, and they are happy to use it. But we are also monitoring how they use the toilet, and that's another issue, and to maintain it. Because they have to collect the small fee from each direct beneficiaries, and it's not easy. And they also need to manage the keys properly. That's also not easy for them. So we are monitoring how they're managing the toilets. And this year we are on the second toilet project. And before selecting this Mandingo quarter, we asked the community to bring a proposal to us if they are interested. They want to have a public toilet in their quarter. And this Mandingo quarter was the only quarter which brought us the proposal. And even before we selected this quarter, they brought the water, sand, bricks. So we thought it's a good sign. But once the project starts, I don't know why, but they don't come to work. So it's, you know, the process is delayed, but we are pressuring them, and they started to work. Not all of them as agreed, but still making some progress. And this is the current status. So I think it's almost there, finally. But it's very difficult. Can I continue on this? Yeah. Okay. So when we went to Wissa several times, we noticed that they don't have any idea of involvement, and they also have no idea of putting a garbage in a trash can. So they just throw away all the trash around there in the community, but they didn't care. So we thought it's a problem. And last year we conducted an environment awareness workshop. And in that workshop, they tested the quality of water. So they collected some water from water sources, and they tested the water, if the water is safe or not. And you can see some water are colored, so which is not good for use. And there are 3 public water pumps in the community which is functioning. So many people have access to those water pumps, but some community members don't have access to water pumps. So in that case, they have to use the water from river like this. And we also showed this map. So prior to the workshop, we mapped where the water sources are. So WS means a water source, and ODF means open defecation site, and DMP means a dumping site. So we map this using the GPS, and we show them to see what they think about it. So the participants were divided into small groups, and they discussed what was going on in this community, and they found some dumping sites and open defecation sites are very close to their water source, so which is not good. So because it's not easy to increase their awareness on the environment, because they have vast forests around there, and they don't see any urgency to protect the forest, because they can get anything from there, and the trees grows without them doing anything. So we are trying to, explain them what the benefits are to protect the environment. So in relation to that, we suggested them to have a cleanup campaign, and they did it in this March. And they also established a hygiene promotion committee in this community. And now that committee is leading all the hygiene promotion activities like cleanup campaign and other things. So at the end of the cleanup campaign, they classify the trash, and they discuss what kind of trash they have and what they are going to do with this. But we also had a challenge for the community leaders to approve the hygiene promotion committee, because the committee cannot work freely without getting approval from the community leadership, and the community leaders hesitated to approve it because they knew they had to collect the garbage themselves, and they didn't want to do it. So it took us a while to convince them, but finally the community leaders approved them, so now the committee is functioning. And during these cleanup campaigns, we also observed, we see in the picture there are people collecting the garbage, which is great, but there are many more other community members who are just sitting and watching us collecting the garbage, not participating in this activity. So we thought it's probably a good idea to educate children, and then they bring home what they have learned at school. So we conducted the waste management workshop for students last month, and they studied about the trash, and they also collected the garbage as practice. So we are planning to continue this exercise.
Sheila,
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's an old slapper?
Go back.
Plastic. Does that say slippers or
Yeah,
something?
slippers.
Oh,
It's okay, everyone's done that.
And the educator asked what kind of, what else do you find? Yeah, it's slippers. Empty bottles, spoiled food, old baskets. So that's what they came up with. Yeah. So we are going to teach the hygiene promotion committee member first, so that they can conduct this kind of workshop in the future.
I think maybe do we want to have a quick 10-minute break now? Get another glass of wine, a mince pie perhaps, or a crisp. Please have a crisp. I bought a lot of that. £37 worth of crisps.
So we have a lot of Christmas.
So the next part of the talk, we're going to have 50 more minutes by Chia to hear about diamond production and the supply chains, so that our diamonds themselves.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the formation of cooperative. We started to encourage the miners and diggers in Wissa to organize themselves in a cooperative, because it's one of the standards to be certified as fair trade. So they embraced our idea and decided to organize themselves in 2019. And they received a training from a cooperative development agency in Liberia, which oversees all the cooperatives in Liberia, and they got the cooperative status. And it took them 2 years to get the full-fledged status, but they finally got it last year. This figure shows our proposed cooperative structure to leave no one behind. The Liberian government is only trying to organize the miners, not the diggers. So if I say miner, that means a license holder. So that means the diggers will be left behind. But because we didn't want to do it, we want to have everybody on board. So we suggested the cooperative to have not only the individual members, but also the group members, like Diggers Association, a women's group, and another group, if there is. And that's how they are. Actually, Diggers Association just got the official membership this month, and women's group have not. But we always invite them, like they are the members of the cooperative. And we have been working to develop their capacity to run and manage the cooperative. So this is when I was coaching to them about their bylaws, and this is their regular meeting. And we also coach how to compile the annual report, which is very difficult for them. They are still working on the annual report for 2020. In 2021, almost 2022 is almost finished. So we are, pressuring them. Okay. And for the knowledge aspect, this year we conducted a basic training on lifetime grading evaluation. And this project targeted 17 diamond mining communities in Liberia. And this project is funded by the World Bank again. And the representatives from these 17 communities came together and had a workshop, and Beth was the trainer on site. And after that, those representatives came back to their communities and they held the knowledge sharing sessions with other miners and diggers. And we monitored all the 17 communities to make sure this session was taking place. So these are photos from these sessions. And we also give a toolkit to each community. And this is a ceremony that took place in Wissa. And we always have to do this kind of ceremony in front of everybody so that people share the toolkit and everybody knows that they have access to the toolkit. Otherwise, somebody just privatize what they are given. So for this project, the total number of the beneficiaries is 1,087. Can I show the video first before you speak?
Oh yes, absolutely.
I really wanted to show this video to you. Her name is Mariama, and you will see why best use that photo for this event. This is one of the participants for the workshop.
Man was telling him to come here, and then apply to tell the donor, choose or chill to come in the blood, particularly with our plan, are too happy. I think on the workshop I saw the explainer, the trainer told us that Red Diamond Valley. I read the whole set. I saw nothing. I not read nothing inside. The money I saw that Red Diamond for it was 40 points. They not even tell me for 2 days. The money finished. So 2 days workshop I have learned Red Diamond Valley. I can get diamond on my own. I have dealer that I can tell my diamond to them because sometimes we can get big diamond. If you don't have bagging, you don't have somebody that can talk for you on the diamond is small. I had dealer, but the dealer gave me 5 bag of rest, 2 to 3 more, 4 1. They can't give me nothing. And you know, diamond, you have to find, you have to look for it. If I get it, I will carry it. They can't give me little or nothing for nothing. And then I lesson on my own. So two Chia, we have been working with Chia for 2 to 3 years. And we love Chia and Chia love us. They try to let the washer keep in. I know that diamond value, diamond build out of jewelry. I know that diamond can change my life. I know that diamond can take me from where I am, carry me to top. I know it, and I learn a lot of things in the workshop. I learned a lot of things in the workshop, especially red diamond. It's killing me. It's killing me. My diamond go away. I don't have nothing. Right now, I'm standing up. I have a tree, no support. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, she was dressed in her best clothes, but this is how she is usually. Yeah. Okay. And I think Beth will tell you, but they are living in a very maybe strange world from your perspective, because they believe in many superstitions and they also practice witchcraft. And so in the training, we reverted some of their superstitious ideas. Yes, so please.
Thanks. Well, I was going to give you just a little insight into what struck me most in the grading workshop, and that was probably how little they understood of diamonds. Their knowledge, as I mentioned in the introduction, was extraordinarily basic. A lot of them believed that diamonds were glass, that they were made of water, literally made of water. So clear, one of you cut it in there. If you knocked it with a hammer, there would be water inside. That, as Mariama's story testified, if you didn't pick up on it, that red diamonds have no value. And that the black in diamonds is caused by lightning strikes. And many more, which I think Chair will illustrate, but there was one particular one that led to one of the most difficult questions that I had to answer, which was when, for the beginning of the talk, beginning of the 2-day training course that I conducted, we gave them all a pre-test so they could fill out their basic knowledge on diamonds, so I had an idea as to what their level of understanding was. And when it came to what is diamond, a lot of them answered, what are diamonds used for? A lot of them answered with, well, diamonds fly planes, which confused me. But so I took that away, and I realised, and I asked one of the Diamonds for Peace volunteer team members out there, at the end of the workshop, where this could have potentially come from. Why do they believe that diamonds could fly planes? I mean, in theory, synthetic diamonds do indeed help manufacture diamond parts, but they certainly don't fly the planes. And Winston went away and had a couple of conversations with some of the miners, and what they came back with was that because they knew that diamonds had enormous amounts of value, then surely these diamonds must have an incredible purpose, an incredible point to them. And because they are in awe of the planes that fly through the sky, diamonds must be associated with something like that. And when our first day's workshop, we did an hour's question and answer session for the miners to put forward as many questions as they liked. to me, and they had learnt during that day that diamonds weren't used to fly planes, they were predominantly used in jewellery. And one of the miners turned around to me and said, "So, I'm working as hard as I am just to put diamonds into jewels? How do I answer that? How did I answer that? I don't know. Throw so many things at it, but I think it goes a long way to illustrate the fact that these people who really across the supply chain should have as equal amount of knowledge about this material as the next have nothing. Nothing, they do not. And I know, Jay, you've got some other nuggets. But yes, there was education is incredibly important, and anything like this for these these communities is essential.
So can I help you?
Yes.
Yeah, and what they believe is actually sometimes not understandable to us, because there's still many miners who didn't take the workshop believe Gina. She's a female devil. She controls the diamonds in the soil. So you have to, give sacrifice to Gina to increase the yield. And the training we did this month, there were that kind of question. Okay, so for the responsible mining, we introduced due diligence last year, and we also explained what is good about due diligence, and we created a video with international potential buyers telling them that they want to buy Liberian diamonds if they satisfy certain conditions like international human rights law and environmental thing. So they embraced the idea and they went through the questions for the first time, but they still need to do it annually, and they need to improve their operation. So this month we invited the mining specialists from the US, and we have introduced efficient mining based on science, because they believe in superstitions. So he did training for 5 days, explained very, very basic about prospecting, exploration, digging holes, mineral processing, and reclamation. So let me just show what the training was about.
I'm Caleb Brand. I'm the mining specialist brought here to West Liberia by Diamonds for Peace Liberia. We just finished up a 5-day training with the community here in Northwest Liberia. So over those 5 days, we went over the whole mining life cycle for alluvial diamonds. So we started off the week by talking about how diamonds form and some of the basics of prospecting, which is the idea of trying to find the general area where pink diamonds are. So we went over some of the techniques and methods to understand where the miners can find diamonds. And then we moved on the next day to the exploration process for diamonds, which is pinpointing exactly where the diamonds are and understanding where to dig their holes. This was very important, and I was glad to see the miners catch on to this idea rapidly, that by pinpointing where the diamonds are in their exploration process, they're able to cut down on the total amount of work that they're able to do, as well as reduce the amount of deforestation and land disturbance that is occurring there. And so during that period, the miners seem to be very excited to be able to do less work and find more diamonds through these processes of exploration. And some of the techniques that we went over to do this included using a soil sampling tool in order to test the ground in various areas. We went over the method of trenching, as well as the proper directions for optimizing the trenching process. So both of those concepts are used widely around the world for mining and for mining exploration. It's great to see the miners grasp onto that here. And then next up in the process, after the miners dig the holes, they find the diamonds, we discuss on how the miners characterize the different soil levels and be able to know when they're reaching the diamondiferous gravels. And so this gave them the opportunity to be able to create new records and be able to share their information so that way in the future they can be more confident that where they're digging is going to lead to them finding diamonds and making more profit. Then following that, went over a variety of techniques and methods for doing mineral processing as well as mineral identification and disproving some of the myths around diamonds that had been common in the area. And this was probably one of the most powerful lessons that we taught during this whole workshop. There are many common beliefs about how diamonds are magnetic, how they're incredibly heavy, slippery, how there's supernatural occurrences that make them go to the bottom of the jig, which is the tool that's used to process the diamondiferous gravels and to recover diamonds. And so the miners were amazed that the diamonds weighed the same as many of the gravels and were able to acquire new concepts in order to increase the amount of diamonds they were able to recover. And so lastly, we had reclamation, which is the process of filling in the holes, and the miners were very accepting and willing to fill in their holes, plant new trees, and overall, they were very well grasping onto all of the concepts that we presented. Looking forward to, in the future, being able to come back and seeing those being implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, so the many miners believe that diamonds are very much heavier than other rocks. So that's why the diamonds are always sink in the bottom of the jig, that the screen they use. So that means they don't look at the surface carefully and they just blow away the bigger diamonds. So that they have been doing. So this training, they finally noticed it. And we also tested to disprove some of the superstitions they have. But one thing, two of the participants said they witnessed stones walked by themselves. And it's, how can we prove that? It's quite difficult. Yeah, but they grasped, the participants who came to the workshop, they are the pioneers in the community, so they grasped, they understood. So it's their time to implement what they have learned. So this is one of the participants. A short video.
My name is Victoria Chisu. From this workshop, I have learned a lot of things. Because for the time that my mom was founded, our parents had a notion that Sample was the rock that traveled with the diamond.
Sample means
They never knew that diamond came from the volcano and pulled it up with all, no other rocking up with the diamond. So whatsoever they see, the black quartz, they classify it as diamond sample. But today, I learned in this training that the mammo quartz is what we call sample, diamond sample, because
they have a local
it
name
twists
for a bigger
and it goes along with the diamond in the rivers and in the stream, and you hit the keys one and another, and they have it deposit one place there where you find most diamond. Where you find most diamond, right, you find most diamond. I get it with it. And I get to learn in this training again, because when we thinking that diamond is heavier than rock. So each year, when we are doing our mineral work, we cut the rock. But in the training, I was taught how to separate the rock 3 times. To divide the rock, that is to wash the rock and then separate it. Also, that make you know that rock and diamond has the same density. I never knew. So each year we do diamond work, we all the rock and throw the big diamonds away. And it most often we see big diamonds all the rock, but we need to get that. In fact, the cheap that we still have magnet or diamond has magnet. Only diamond does not have magnet. So I've done all of these things in the training. So I really appreciate the training, and I tell them for thank you for the knowledge that they pass on to me. Yes, and I also extend my greeting to Beth. I'm here, so.
Yeah, so that's what we did this month. So we trying to build a transparent supply chain and getting diamonds into the whole market. So for the first line is about the cooperatives. Actually, they got their own mining license, so they are planning to mine diamonds with their own funds. Then we need to find a legal exporter who is willing to cooperate with us, and we have some ideas about that. And the cooperative needs to redo the due diligence, and we're going to publish the results, and they need to continue and to improve their operations. And we will still need to develop their skills on the rough diamond grading and valuation. So we're planning another training next year, and we need to decide which technology to use to ensure the traceability. And we need to decide the mechanism to bring the diamonds to the responsible market. We have some ideas, we haven't decided yet. So that's what we are thinking. Yeah, and sorry, we're kind of rushing.
It's okay. Yeah, so I think the final point that we want to focus on the work that Diamonds for Peace are doing, we'd like to draw attention to the nice shiny box that we're looking at in the corner of the room. And I'd like to welcome, call you Beth for this purpose, to the Johnson's Rock project that you've done in collaboration with Will and
Yeah, this is very, when I was out over in Victoria, you've just seen, was the one that initiated this, because we were, on the second to last day, I was walking through the village, and I wanted to pick up a stone, a souvenir to take back with me. I mean, literally just a rock. I mean, like anything, a pebble, because I like to pick up pebbles randomly from places I've been to keep, and I'll hold on to it as a souvenir. And Victoria said, well, actually, but wait, I've got some prettier stones that I can show you. So she vanishes and then comes back 20 minutes later with a really old carrier bag full of rocks, sits me down with them and says, look, you can have one of these. Pulls out a ruby, pulls out a sapphire, pulls out spinel, quartz. She's sitting on hundreds of pounds worth of material, which her and her fellow miners would just throw back into the water. These were Johnson rocks. They were just the pretty stones, but they had no real meaning. No one else wanted to buy them. So I was like, oh, we'll buy them. And lo and behold, we've discovered, because as soon as we said that, and Chair bought up the entire bag of Victoria's material, then the entire village descended on us. One of the miners ran down to the river, literally scooped up a pile full of gravel and literally dumped it on the table in front of us. And sure enough, 70% of that was, okay, albeit low grade, but it was ruby. And I mean, okay, fine, it's not thousands of pounds a carat, but it's still workable. So, on top of what we were hoping to achieve with the coloured rock campaign, is actually to turn it into a little bit of an additional income generator. I have been working with a friend, Will O'Dell, on some pieces called the Seed Liberia collection, which are based on the idea that these rubies are potentially the seed to that other little source of income, which is so important to helping them move away from this dependence on their supporters. They can actually create their own autonomy. And yes, they are available for sale, pre-order in all materials, but we're hoping, and this is also a project that's been supported by Provenance Proof, the Hublin initiative, to help improve the traceability along the supply chain of these kind of gemstones. So there are a couple of little flyers that I've produced, which gives you the full story behind the stone, and indeed the story of the miners from which these pieces have been created and that were sourced by these particular miners. These pieces were created by Zoe and Rebecca. And I'm hoping to do a little collection for Victoria as well. So it's a germ of an idea, and hopefully it's an idea that will take off. Yes, and in support of Diamonds of Peace, because obviously all profits go directly beyond the fixed price cost of the production of the material, the pieces. Everything's going to Diamonds of Peace. There we go. Buy them. Buy them e-crisps.
And I suppose our last question for Chair is, we've gathered a lot of people in this room to come listen to what the work that Diamonds for Peace do. What can everyone in the room do to help?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So we need a supporters, good supporters. Not the ones like the one in Liberia, and also we also welcome corporate members, so that we can provide trainings to more miners, because there are 100,000 miners in Liberia only, and once we develop the model in WISA, we are planning to expand that model to other communities and also other countries. So yeah, please become a supporter or corporate member, or we also welcome volunteer like best funders.
It's definitely an organisation that's lovely to work for, so I would thoroughly recommend it. But your money's probably more important. And spread the word about Diamonds of Peace as well. I think that's...
Perhaps wear a nice necklace and someone will ask you where you got it from.
There's a reason I call this one. Yeah, no, working for Chair's an incredible human with such a drive, and it's a small team.
Yeah, very small.
Really small
We are
team.
very small organization. So we have only one full-time staff in Japan, and we have one full-time staff in Liberia and 2 part-timers.
And look at the amount of work they've done, and that's on a very small team. And going out to these is
Yeah, and if you want to go to WISA, yeah, you can. Because nowadays we take some visitors to there. So, but you need to stay at the locals' place, so be prepared.
Yes, pretty basic.
And can I open the floor to any questions that anyone has after? Very good.
Can I ask what the gender balance is like?
Oh, gender balance in a cooperative?
Just in, yeah, how it all works. Who's doing mining? Who's doing the accounts? Who's doing where the knowledge is going?
Yeah, this cooperative has many miners, I'd say. But I think 1/3 of the members are women, and they are women miners, and which we don't see in other communities. Yeah, so I think WISA is more progressive than other communities, and the women's group is also strong in this community, and they say whatever they want to, and yeah, men respect them. Yeah, but that's not common in Liberia. Because in another county called Grand Cape Mount County, women are not supposed to go into the mining claim. Although, even if you have a mining license, yeah, because of Gina, because you wanna make her angry,
Is it only women that make Gina angry?
Sorry?
Is it only the women that make Gina angry?
Yeah. So actually, I was denied to enter their mining time when I visited there, and yeah, that's another reason we chose to work with them, because they don't have any kind of rule like that. Though some of them believe in Gina.